Hello everyone, we're back with you for another weekly update of our night sky. And again, this is Seth Mayo. I'm the Curator of Astronomy for the Lohmann Planetarium right here at the Museum of Arts and Sciences. And this is another remote version of our Sky Tonight program that we usually hold in the Lohmann Planetarium, our daily star show. And just as we did last week, we are using our wonderful piece of software called Stellarium that's actually totally free for everyone to use. And that's what we see right on the screen here. And what I'll be doing is showing you the sky for the week of March 22nd, 2020. So everything I'll be talking about here will cover most of that week when it comes to the stars and the planets that I'll be talking about coming up here. I will be talking about things later in the week as well when it comes to the moon, but everything else will pretty much stay the same through the week. So hopefully this will inspire you to get outside, look at the night sky, especially if you have a little more time at home. Maybe you have a chance to go out and explore the heavens with your family. There's always something really cool to see. So let's get right to it. And as you can see here, this is our sky during the daytime, and we have it set to Daytona Beach, Florida. And one thing I want to stress is that even if you're not in Daytona, even if not in Florida, this night sky tour will still be relevant, especially if you're in the northern hemisphere. Things I'll be talking about will relate in some way or another with what you can see. Things, of course, change depending on your latitude, but if you're not here in Florida, that is okay. You know, I'll be showing you things that you can see around the world, so that's kind of nice. So anyway, let's continue on by looking at our sunset in the west here. Now, one thing that has just happened and is still kind of happening now is the sun is setting almost exactly west. And this only happens twice a year. That is the beginning of spring, called the spring equinox, which just happened technically on March 19th, so just a few days ago. And the other time it happens is the fall equinox in September, the beginning of fall. That's the only time when the sun rises exactly east and sets exactly west. So what's happened now that we're into the spring, and I'll take my mouse out here, here's our sun, of course. The sun will now be setting more and more north and sort of almost getting higher in the sky. And that's all due to Earth's tilt. Earth is tilted at 23.5 degrees, and as the Earth goes around the sun hits us at different angles throughout the year. That's what causes our seasons. And so in the spring and the fall, we're getting about an equal amount of day and night. And that's where the term equinox comes into play. Equinox means equal night. And that's supposed to happen on the spring and fall equinox. It's not an exact thing, you know, so right on the beginning of spring, it's not perfect day and night because of our atmosphere. Depending on your latitude, that can actually happen a couple days before the spring equinox, a perfect amount of day and night, but it's pretty close for our purposes here. So it happened very early this year on March 19th. It's the earliest spring equinox. It happened at the 11 o'clock hour on March 19th, which is on Thursday. And it's the earliest spring equinox technically in the last 124 years. And that has to do with daylight saving time and leap years and all that kind of stuff. But kind of an interesting little fun fact there. But anyway, so we'll set the sun, and still at this time of year, the sun is setting kind of in the 7:30 time frame. So let's make that happen. We'll set the sun, and we'll continue on into the evening as we get into 8, and we'll go to about 8:30 when it gets pretty dark out by then. And so now we are seeing the things that we've been noticing in the west. I mentioned it last week, but we can still talk about it now real quickly. Here is the planet Venus still shining beautiful in the sky. You can see up here it says Venus right on that side there, so we got that right. And as you know, Venus is the brightest planet that you can see from planet Earth. It is beautiful, very reflective, second planet from the sun, and the hottest planet in the solar system, getting to temperatures up to 900 degrees. So Venus is still extraordinary. Now, if we fast forward a couple days, or at least later in the week, we'll notice the moon, starting like Thursday and Friday, the moon will actually join in. And if you look down here, you'll see the date will change. See how it says March 23rd here? We start on the 22nd. So I'm going to skip a day one day at a time here, and watch carefully in this area, and I'll zoom in, and you'll see the crescent moon will sort of enter the fray here. So there you go. This is on the 26th, and we get to the 27th and the 28th, and what's really cool is we get to the 28th is you'll have the crescent moon joining Venus. So that will be a lovely pairing going on for these objects located in our solar system. Of course, the moon's much closer to us than Venus, but they'll be sort of next to each other in the west in the evening on the 28th will be nice. And then as we go into the end of the week and into next week, you'll see the moon kind of drift away as it moves around the Earth, enter the constellation called Taurus the Bull, which I can actually hit one of the stars in Taurus and then turn on the constellation. So you'll see that the moon will now be in Taurus's horns, Taurus the Bull from Greek mythology, and one of the signs of the zodiac is a winter constellation that we can still see, even though spring has now begun. We can still find it a little bit lower in the west, and so the moon will be in that side of the sky. So anyway, so we still have Venus there, but later in the week, the moon will join in, which is always cool, and it will be a nice crescent moon. A really good time to look at the moon with a telescope as well, because the shadows that are cast on the lit side of the moon will almost create a 3D-like effect when you see the moon. Actually zoom in here. Let's turn off all those constellations here and zoom in. And that's a really cool feature when you're looking at the moon, not when it's full, but when it's a lesser phase. You'll see some shadows going on in the craters, and it will create this sort of almost 3D relief on the moon, and that always looks great. So that's my favorite time to see the moon, especially crescent through a telescope. So if you have one at home or even binoculars, this is a good time, especially later in the week. So the moon is quite lovely, and again joining Venus in the west. But anyway, let's go back in time, back to the 22nd, and so we'll go before the moon joins Venus. As we also mentioned last week, some of the winter constellations are still up. Orion, the hunter with the 3 stars of his belt, are still visible. It's in the southwest, of course. So you have that. Even again, though these are winter constellations, even though it's spring, you can still see them in the sky for a good part of the spring. And so there's Orion the hunter, and then his belt points to the brightest star Sirius here with the dog called Canis Major. And then above that, the small dog, this star is called Procyon, and that's part of the little itty-bitty dog Canis Minor. As we zoom in, you'll see this tiny little dog there, and these 3 constellations still really nice in the sky. I mentioned Taurus earlier, so I'll put up Taurus as well. Another constellation I did not mention last week, but also nice for the winter and still pretty high in the sky. If you look above Orion, way up here, you'll find 2 bright stars. Those are the head stars of the Gemini twins, also from Greek mythology. This is Pollux and this is Castor, and those are the twins' names, Pollux and Castor there, and that's the names of those 2 stars there. So Pollux is a very bright star. So these are nice. Oh, one more constellation I'll mention as well is if you look above Taurus, you have this sort of, I guess you could say, oval shape constellation here. And there's a really bright star here. This is called Capella, and that forms something called Auriga, the charioteer. This one takes a lot of imagination to figure it out. And, Orion is not bad. It kind of looks like a person. Auriga is a little tough, but that's okay. That's how these things go. And the star Capella is really bright. And in the winter, and of course the spring, as we're in right now, you find all of these, and you can find these 6 very bright stars that form something called the winter hexagon. So if you connect them, so we have Pollux up here, and then we go to Capella, then to Aldebaran, then to Rigel, which is the left foot of Orion, then Sirius, then Procyon. You will get this big 6-sided shape that you find in the wintertime called the winter hexagon. That's kind of nice. So I like to look for those at this time of year and in this, in the spring, and they're really very bright. So these are some of the brightest stars. You can see the entire sky all in one area, which is great. So anyway, so those are really nice to find. Hopefully you can find them kind of setting in the southwest. One more area I'll focus on here is we're going to move towards the actual southeast east, and maybe even more just directly east, looking towards the beach, at least here in Daytona. And you're starting to see spring stars rise. Now that the spring is here, we've gone through the spring equinox, we can talk a little bit about the spring and what to expect. And if you look carefully, hopefully you can see this, there's kind of a hook-like shape. Looks like a fisherman's hook here. That is supposed to be the head of Leo the lion. So let's draw Leo, a spring zodiac sign. Here he is, the lion. There you go. He's pretty scary from Greek mythology. So that's Leo there. And if you happen to stay up a little later, let's leave Leo up. We're going to speed time up. Maybe we'll go into the 9 o'clock hour, even closer to maybe 10. Maybe even 10:30. That's a pretty good time, right? At about 10:30, you'll find some really bright spring stars starting to rise. And if you look down towards the eastern horizon, you'll see this star here and maybe this one here. Those are very bright. And if you want to find them, you can use a very famous shape right here in the northeast. You might know what this is. It looks like a giant spoon. Of course, that's the Big Dipper. So here's the handle of the Big Dipper. Here is the bowl, which is actually not a constellation. This is called an asterism, a shape that's sort of like a constellation, but not as formal, not as recognized around the world. Definitely famous, of course, in the United States, the Big Dipper. And so this is a shape that's a little more recent. It doesn't go back to ancient Greek mythology, but it's still a significant shape in the sky. This is actually part of a bear constellation. But a little trick here is some people like to use the handle of the Big Dipper, and you can arc with the dipper's handle. So we like to say you arc to Arcturus. That's the name of this star here. So you make this arcing shape. Following the handle of the Big Dipper, you arc towards Arcturus right here, which is part of the constellation called Boötes, the herdsman. But just sticking with the star Arcturus, which it says here in the upper left here, Arcturus is a very, very bright star. It's actually the 4th brightest star in the sky, relatively close to us, about 37 light years away. So the light takes about 37 years to travel from that star to us. It's a little bigger than our sun. It's actually a little more massive than the sun, but about 25 times bigger. And it's at the end of its life. It's in what's called the red giant phase of its life. It's kind of run out of fusing hydrogen in its core, now fusing heavier elements. It's bloating up, and then eventually it will shed its gas into space, and that's how it will die and leave behind the dead core of the star called a white dwarf. And so this star is undergoing that process right now, kind of similar to what our sun will do in 4.5 or 5 billion years from now. So it's kind of the future of our sun as seen in Arcturus. And one little fun fact about Arcturus is in the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, going way back to 1933, this star was used to start the Chicago World's Fair. They focused a telescope on the star. When the light from the star hit these little photocells, it powered the lights for the fair. And that's how they started, using the star Arcturus. That's kind of a fun fact there about that star. Inside the constellation called Boötes, again, he is the herdsman. And so that's a good one. And then so I told you can arc to Arcturus, and then some people like to spike. You just make a spiking sort of thing there towards Spica, this star here, another very bright star in the sky, part of something called Virgo, the maiden, another zodiac sign here. It's a woman standing here in the sky. And Spica is about the 16th brightest star in the sky, a little farther away from us than Arcturus, at about 250 light years away. But what's fun about it is it's a binary star system, so 2 stars orbiting around each other. They actually orbit so closely, their gravity of each star actually pulls on each other and actually makes each star egg-shaped. So we have 2 egg-shaped stars here, really close, that look like one star more than 250 light years away. So those are also considered springtime stars. Got to stay up a little bit later, but you have a chance to see them rising in the east in kind of the 10 o'clock hour at this time of the year. So those are nice. Looking forward to the spring stars, but a good reminder, those wintertime stars still dominating the sky, especially in the southwest, and they are setting. And so definitely keep your eye on those stars and constellations as they sort of depart the sky, and then the spring stars will take hold. So hopefully you get to see those, and like I always do in our planetarium, maybe you can see all the constellations in the sky, and there are so many to find and locate and talk about. So I hope we get a chance to do that. So anyway, thank you for joining us for another weekly version of this Sky Tonight program. And hopefully you can join us again for another program like this. Again, hopefully it inspires you to do this on your own and study the universe and explore it. There's always something cool to see. And again, you can learn more about these things and other programs we're doing on our website, and also on our social media on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. So take care. Hope to see you again, and happy stargazing.